This story is called My Golden Boy Brother's Girlfriend Falsely Accused Me, My Family Turned Their Backs on Me, and Now They Want to Make Amends. Hey everyone, I never imagined I'd be sharing my story here, but life has a way of coming full circle. So get ready. This one's a mess. Let's dive in. I'm a 25-year-old guy, and I always knew my younger brother, Ryan, who's 23, was the favorite. My parents, who are 55 and 59, didn't even try to hide it. They practically worshipped him. He was their pride and joy, the one they constantly bragged about at family gatherings. Ryan could crash a car into a tree, and somehow my parents would blame the tree. Meanwhile, I was labeled the troublemaker, not because I actually caused any problems, but simply because I wasn't him. No matter what I did, it was never enough. If I got straight A's, they'd say Ryan was naturally smart and didn't need to work as hard. If I won an award, they'd dismiss it as just an extracurricular activity. When I worked hard at a summer job, they laughed and said Ryan was enjoying his youth instead of wasting time on pointless things. I felt like I was just background noise in my own family. But it wasn't only that my parents favored him, Ryan himself treated me terribly. He knew exactly how to manipulate them against me. Not that he had to try very hard since they already preferred him. I remember being 17 and studying for an important test. Ryan kept barging into my room, messing with my stuff, poking me in the back of the head and humming loudly just to annoy me. I told him to leave, but he ignored me. After 10 minutes of this, I slammed my textbook shut and yelled at him to get out. Of course, he immediately ran to our parents. Suddenly, I was the angry one, and he was scared of me. He told them I was taking my stress out on him. When I tried to explain, they weren't interested. Instead, they scolded me for my temper and accused me of bullying my poor little brother. Ryan was a pro at planting doubt in their minds. He wouldn't directly accuse me of things. He'd just drop little hints to make them question me. Once, I saved up to buy myself a laptop. I was really proud of it. I had worked for months to afford it. But Ryan got jealous, so he casually mentioned to my parents, "I don't know how he could afford that. Are you sure he didn't take money from somewhere?" That's all it took. Suddenly, I was being interrogated about my finances. They demanded proof of how I got the money. Ryan would never have been questioned like that, but since it was me, they immediately assumed I had done something shady. As I got older, I distanced myself from their nonsense. I focused on improving myself, got into fitness, learned new skills, and saved money. I knew I wouldn't get financial support from my parents, so I made sure I didn't need it. Ryan, on the other hand, was the complete opposite. He treated life like a vacation, never keeping a job for more than a few months. He was always jumping from one hobby or business idea to the next, but nothing ever worked out. He went to college, but not to actually study. He was there to party and barely pass his classes. And of course, my parents paid for everything. Then came his girlfriend, Zoe, a 22-year-old girl. She and Ryan started dating while he was in college, and she was exactly his type. Loud, constantly needing attention, and obsessed with social media, trying to act like an influencer. She had this fake charm that worked on guys like Ryan. But if you paid attention, it was easy to see through. Zoe thrived on drama. If nothing was happening, she'd create a problem just for the attention. She exaggerated everything. If someone at a store gave her a weird look, it became, "That cashier was so rude to me," probably jealous or something. If a professor gave her constructive criticism, she'd say, "My professor is literally targeting me because I'm too pretty." If a waitress got her order wrong, she'd act like it was a personal attack and go on a long rant about how people don't respect her. Every conversation had to be about her. She would interrupt, shift the focus onto herself, and make sure she was the center of attention at all times. A classic pick-me girl. At first, I didn't care. Ryan went through girlfriends like clockwork, so I figured she'd be gone soon enough. But she stuck around. And over time, I started noticing things. Small at first, but then they became impossible to ignore. She was getting too friendly with me, and I think you know what I mean by that. She'd go out of her way to compliment me, but only when no one else was around. "You're so disciplined. I wish Ryan had your focus," she'd say. At first, I brushed it off, thinking she was just making conversation. But then it escalated. She started asking personal questions, things that had nothing to do with casual small talk. She wanted to know about my workouts, how often I trained, and what supplements I took. Then she'd make little remarks with a smirk, saying Ryan should learn from me. She even started texting me out of nowhere for advice on things completely unrelated to me. At first, they were innocent sounding. Hey, do you know a good app for meal planning? Or what protein powder do you use? Things she could have asked anyone. But then the tone changed. You must get hit on a lot at the gym. You probably don't even notice anymore. If I worked as hard as you, maybe I'd look half as good. You should train me sometime. I bet you could teach me a few things. Ryan's so slow sometimes, LOL. I kept my responses short and cold. The first time she sent something inappropriate, I shut it down immediately. Not happening! Don't text me like that again. She backed off for a week. Then she started again. She kept pushing, as if she thought I'd eventually cave. She even began texting me late at night, but I ignored her. And when we were in the same room, that's when it became impossible to ignore. If Ryan stepped out, she'd lean in too close, laugh at things that weren't funny, and accidentally brush my arm. Her compliments started sounding like invitations. One night, after a family dinner, she sneaked into my room. That's when I realized it wasn't just harmless flirting. She cornered me, speaking in a lower tone, testing the waters. She said she was bored with Ryan, that I was different, that no one had to know. Then she tried to kiss me. I shoved her away instantly. Are you out of your damn mind? I snapped. I made it clear she needed to stay far away from me, and that if she ever tried this again, I'd expose her. Her whole act changed in an instant. No embarrassment, no apology, just a calculating look. I knew she wasn't going to let this slide. She smiled fakely and left like nothing had happened. I assumed she'd keep her distance, but she did the exact opposite. The next day, I walked into my house, and the air felt heavy. My parents looked stiff. Ryan stared at me like I had just killed his dog. Then Zoe, standing behind them, burst into tears. I didn't want to say anything, but last night he tried to force himself on me. I froze. Wait, what? I thought I misheard her. Then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd. Just last night, she had tried to seduce me. Now, she was pretending to be the victim. Ryan lunged at me, and my dad had to hold him back. You sick freak? I turned to Zoe, waiting for her to admit she was lying. But she just stood there, looking heartbroken, like I had actually done something. I tried to explain, but they didn't care. No proof, no questions, just instant judgment. My dad's voice was cold. Get your things and get out. And just like that, I was erased from my own family. My cousin Lucas, who is 28 years old, reached out to me. He was the only one who never believed Zoe's deception. Since childhood, Lucas had been like a brother, always supporting me, especially when Ryan tried to sabotage me. Lucas offered me a place to stay, and at that moment, he felt like my only true family. I stayed with him for several days until I could regain some stability. However, I didn't want to impose on him for too long. I knew he had his own challenges to deal with. Though he urged me to stay longer, I eventually left, and we kept in regular contact. Within a week, I secured a short-term warehouse job. The pay was miserable, but I didn't have the luxury of being picky. I saved just enough to rent a cramped room in a shared house, the kind of place where thin walls left you hoping your roommates weren't dangerous or unstable. Soon, I found a second job working overnight shifts at a gas station. 2 jobs meant little sleep, just working, eating the cheapest meals possible, and catching brief naps in my car between shifts. It was grueling, but I refused to waste time feeling sorry for myself. Every moment spent dwelling on anger was a moment stolen from rebuilding my life. Meanwhile, Ryan was living extravagantly. I tried to avoid his social media, but sometimes curiosity got the better of me. Every post was the same: lavish parties, luxury trips, expensive toys, and even pictures with Zoe. Watching him recklessly burn through money was like witnessing someone squander an inheritance in real time. My parents were still funding his lifestyle, and he was exploiting it fully. I won't lie, it enraged me. Not just because of the injustice, but because I knew exactly how it would end. Ryan had never worked a real job, had no useful skills, no discipline, and no ambition. He was draining money like it was endless, but I knew eventually it would run out. And when that day came, I knew who he would turn to. But that wasn't my concern. I needed to survive and carve out my own future. In a few months, my warehouse job stabilized, and I started picking up extra shifts when possible. I lived frugally, cutting out any unnecessary expenses and saving every dollar to build a financial safety net. Once I had some breathing room, I started thinking about long-term goals. I read beginner books on finance and investing, learning how to manage money, save it, and help it grow. I even dabbled in business research, reading stories about entrepreneurs who built something from nothing. It didn't all apply to me, but it sparked new ideas. I also taught myself basic coding, not enough to become an expert, but sufficient to land small online jobs. Every free moment was dedicated to learning. I didn't just want to survive, I wanted to become unstoppable. I began freelancing slowly at first, small gigs like creating simple websites or writing articles for $10 to $20. It wasn't much, but I persisted. Each job brought more experience, contacts, and positive reviews. Before long, I started landing better paying projects, building websites for small businesses, managing digital marketing, and even basic app development. Soon, my freelance income matched my warehouse earnings. I remember the first month I earned $1,000 from freelancing. It wasn't a fortune, but it proved I was on the right track. After a year, I moved out of that tiny shared house and rented my own small apartment in a decent neighborhood. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. No questionable roommates, no fears of theft. I finally had a space of my own. That's when things really began to accelerate. I quit the warehouse job and committed to freelancing full-time. Without the exhaustion from long shifts, I could fully concentrate on growing my business. I raised my rates, took on more clients, and expanded my skills. Learning SEO, digital advertising, and e-commerce. I built websites that genuinely helped businesses thrive. Once word spread, clients started coming to me. By my second year, I was more than just getting by. I was comfortable. I had savings, no debts, and the freedom to work on my terms. But I didn't stop there. I thought about scaling my business beyond freelancing. I built my own website, created service packages for various business needs, and marketed myself as a consultant. I automated routine tasks like invoicing, scheduling, and emails to free up time for larger projects. I even started outsourcing work to other freelancers, managing them while still delivering top-quality results to my clients. By year 3, I was earning more than I had ever imagined. Not a millionaire, but enough to live well, save for the future, and never stress about bills again. Most importantly, I had complete control over my life. No boss, no rigid schedule, and no one to answer to but myself. As for my family, I cut ties with them completely after the incident with Zoe. They never reached out, and I didn't care. Lucas and I, however, remained close, meeting occasionally to catch up. One day, after a few months without seeing him, Lucas called with big news. We met at a coffee shop, and without hesitation, he told me Ryan's life was falling apart. It started with small signs. The lavish vacation stopped, and his social media posts slowed down. He was struggling financially. He had tried launching a business, some ill-conceived get-rich-quick scheme that failed disastrously. He lost a fortune, drained his savings, and still hadn't learned how to maintain a steady job. Reality hit him hard. When the money vanished, so did his so-called friends. Then there was Zoe. She had been just as flashy, playing the perfect partner. But as soon as the money dried up, she left, and worse, she had been cheating on him with one of his friends. Honestly, I wasn't surprised. She was never in it for love, just the lifestyle, the attention, and the luxuries. Once Ryan couldn't provide that anymore, she moved on. My parents finally started noticing. After years of enabling Ryan and funding his failures, they began to question everything. I wasn't in their lives anymore, but I could imagine the disappointment and regret as they watched their golden child unravel. I should have felt sympathy, but I didn't. Here's where things got interesting. Zoe, known for her loose tongue, confessed during a drunken night out that she had lied about me. She admitted I had done nothing wrong and that she accused me out of spite after I rejected her and threatened to expose her. She even boasted about how easily my parents believed her falsehoods. One of her friends recorded the confession. I learned about this through Lucas. Eventually, one of Zoe's toxic friends sent the recording to my parents. Whether out of spite or for drama, I didn't know. Either way, my parents heard it. I wasn't there to witness their reaction, but I could imagine the shame and regret as they realized how badly they had wronged me. Soon after, Ryan's problems escalated, and guess who tried to contact me? It started with missed calls from my parents, followed by messages saying, "We need to talk," and voicemails filled with apologies. Ryan even messaged me, asking to talk. I ignored them. They weren't reaching out of love or remorse. They just wanted relief from their guilt. Then, my mother left a voicemail that caught my attention. "Ryan is in serious trouble. Please, call me back." I almost laughed. Had his credit cards maxed out? Had another failed scheme backfired? I let the message sit for a day before curiosity got the better of me. When I finally called, she answered instantly, relieved I had returned her call. "It's Ryan," she said. "He's drowning in debt, bad investments, loans, and now no one will help him." I couldn't help but laugh. What did she expect from me? That I'd bail him out with the money I had worked so hard to earn? The same people who had thrown me away when I needed them? I simply asked, "And what does that have to do with me?" She responded, "You're doing well now. You have the means to help." There it was. Ryan had destroyed everything, and suddenly, the son they had abandoned was the only one who could save him. How ironic. I let the silence linger before responding. "You're joking, right?" She quickly replied, "We know we messed up. We realize things should have turned out differently. But family stands by each other, and Ryan needs support. You wouldn't just let your family sink, would you?" I took a deep breath. "Let me get this straight. You all chose to believe a liar over me, cast me out without hesitation, ignored me for years, and now, since Ryan has finally destroyed his own life, you expect me to clean up the mess?" "Sweetheart, it's not," she began, but I cut her off. Instead of telling her off like I wanted to, I said, "Let me think about it," and hung up. No, I wasn't truly considering it. I just wanted them to stew in uncertainty, to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I'd come in like the perfect son they never valued. Let them hope. Let them wait. Eventually, I arranged a meeting. I told my mother to have everyone there. Her, my father, and Ryan. If they wanted to plead, they'd have to do it face to face. We met at a decent restaurant, one I knew was beyond their budget now. They probably thought I chose it out of politeness. When I arrived, they were already seated. My mother looked like she'd aged a decade. My father, usually arrogant and self-assured, appeared uneasy. And Ryan? He looked shattered, truly desperate for the first time. I sat down, leaned back, and said, "All right, go ahead." They didn't even try to ease into it. My mother launched into a lengthy speech about family, forgiveness, and second chances. My father, too proud to grovel, just muttered something about mistakes being made. Then Ryan spoke. "I messed up. I know that. I just need a little help to get back on track." I let them talk, soaking in every word. It was oddly satisfying. Then I said, "No." I shrugged. "I'm not helping you." My mother gasped sharply. "Sweetheart, be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I echoed. "You abandoned me and only came back now that your golden child finally ran out of luck." "Dude, I'm your brother." "No, you're not," I replied coldly. "You stopped being my brother the moment you betrayed me." He wanted to argue, but I wasn't finished. I pulled out my wallet, placed a $100 bill on the table, and said, "Here, buy yourself some dignity." Then I stood up and left. Years of anger, bitterness, and frustration vanished as I walked away, leaving them staring at that bill like it was an insult, which frankly, it was. Months passed. Life carried on. I had worked tirelessly for years to ensure I never had to rely on anyone. Now, I was finally in a position to enjoy what I had built. My business was thriving, my circle stayed strong, and for the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. Meanwhile, my family wasn't doing well. Ryan's life had completely collapsed. His debts caught up with him faster than he could dodge them. He burned through every handout, maxed out every credit line, and defaulted on loans he should never have taken. Desperation drove him into shady schemes for quick money. But unsurprisingly, he wasn't smart enough to cover his tracks. A few bad deals, unpaid debts to dangerous people. It wasn't long before legal trouble found him. Fraud, embezzlement, whatever half-baked plan he thought would save him became his downfall. He got arrested, dragged through court, and eventually sentenced. The same guy who had everything handed to him was now alone, broke, and sitting in a prison cell with no one left to bail him out. My parents were devastated, not because Ryan had become a criminal, but because their precious son had lost his golden shine. Hard to keep up the perfect family act when your pride and joy is wearing prison orange. Years of enabling him, covering for mistakes, throwing money at problems, hoping he'd magically grow up, led them here. Every bridge they burned with me, every time they treated me like an outsider, they wished they could undo it all. Too bad. By the time they realized they had backed the wrong person, I was too far ahead to care. Thanks for all the support, everyone. Honestly, I didn't expect this post to blow up. Reading your comments has been incredible. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in dealing with a family like this. For those asking if I regret cutting them off, no, not at all. I built my life without their help, and I'm proud of where I am now. If they couldn't stand by me when I needed them, they don't deserve a place at my table now that I've succeeded. I appreciate all the kind words and messages. It means a lot. And for those wondering if Ryan ever reached out again, nope. Guess begging's tougher without YF. Final update, didn't think I'd post again, but here we are. Business has been booming, like really thriving. I've been expanding, taking on bigger clients, and getting invites to networking events I wouldn't have even known about a few years ago. It's been busy, but I've built a solid team that allows me to enjoy the rewards of my hard work. Honestly, I stopped thinking about my family and all the drama they brought. I figured that chapter of my life was closed. Apparently, Zoe didn't get the memo. A few months ago, she resurfaced, not directly at first. Someone sent me screenshots of her social media posts. Nothing outright, but clearly throwing shade. Funny how some people get rich stepping on others. Success doesn't erase what you've done. Some people just know how to fake it. At first, I ignored it. I had better things to do than worry about my brother's bitter ex. But then she crossed the line. I found out she had contacted some of my clients, hinting that I was untrustworthy and had done shady things to get ahead. One client even asked me about her directly. That's when I knew I had to act fast. I didn't want more drama, but my business is my livelihood. I couldn't let her damage it. So I did the sensible thing. I called my lawyer. And trust me, it got ugly for her. Here's where it gets interesting. Remember that old video of Zoe drunkenly admitting she lied about me? Turns out that video was a game changer. My lawyer said it was more than enough to prove she had a history of making false accusations. Paired with her recent behavior, we had a solid defamation case. Long story short, we filed the lawsuit. Once she realized we had that video as evidence, her attitude changed fast. She tried to backtrack, saying she never meant to hurt my business, that her posts were just venting and she hadn't actually lied to clients. Didn't matter. The video ruined her credibility. The case went to court. She tried to play the victim, but the video destroyed any chance she had. The judge didn't believe a word of her excuses. In the end, she was found liable for defamation. She had to pay damages and publicly apologize on social media, admitting that she had lied about me and that her recent claims were false. The fallout was harsh. Her so-called influencer career, over. Her followers didn't appreciate being lied to, and her reputation tanked overnight. Last I heard, she lost most of her brand deals, and her social media presence plummeted. So yeah, Zoe tried to stir up trouble again, but this time she faced real consequences. Life's good, business is thriving, and some bridges are better left burned.